Welcome to the Confluence cast presented by Columbus Underground. We are a weekly Columbus-centric podcast focusing on the civics, lifestyle, entertainment, and people of our city. I'm your host, Tim Fulton. This week, I sat down with Walker Evans, co-founder and editor of Columbus Underground, to explore what's resonating most in local media and what those stories reveal about the larger systems that we are all currently navigating. From the rise of protests at the Statehouse to the ripple effects of new zoning policies, we covered how housing, development, and drone factories are shaping the future of Columbus. We unpacked the tension between growth and preservation, the impact of private equity on everything from chicken sandwiches to shopping malls, and why local progress sometimes depends on who is still in the smoky back room. Whether you care about affordable housing, have feelings about paid parking, or just want to understand why Columbus works the way it does, this conversation is a reminder that the local stories matter because they're not just local. You can get more information on what we discussed today in the show notes for this episode at theconfluencecast.com. Enjoy the interview. Sitting down here with Walker Evans, the co-founder and editor of Columbus Underground. Walker, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm good. It's been a minute.
It has.
It is time to talk about some of the most popular articles that have occurred on Columbus Underground. Talk about, we did a little pre-session talking sort of about like what's actually important.
Yeah.
That things are happening. For example, you guys have been doing a lot more video work specifically around the protests that are occurring around the Statehouse, getting a lot of engagement. So how have things been? What's going on?
Good. I mean, busy start to the year. We're, I assume as the time this goes up, like fully through the first quarter of the year.
Indeed.
Yeah. 2025, 25% done with 2025.
Okay. Yeah.
Stumbled to get that out. So, we like to look back at analytics and kind of see what's being well read, partly to help inform our decisions. Is this worthy of a follow-up? Should we be doing more of this sort of thing? Sometimes it's a fluke.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is no follow-up. But always kind of good just to reflect upon what people find important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So first of all, talk about sort of your headspace around the protests. And I mean, you're right here. You're at Gay and High, so you see them.
Yeah, it's tough. There's no like centralized repository of all the protests that are going to happen because it's just not that by nature. It's different groups of people, protesting different things. But the really nice thing about having an office one block from the Statehouse is we'll be sitting here working in the afternoon, and all of a sudden you start hearing chanting in the background,
right? And
it's like, oh, there's a march coming by, or oh, that's coming from the Statehouse.
So
we're able to pop over there pretty quick and take photos and videos. And Ashley's been doing a lot of the photography, which has been really great. And I've been kind of just shooting some quick iPhone footage. And
I think when I think about like protests at the Statehouse, I think back to 2020.
Yes.
How does the vibe feel? Like, is it a little bit more in the spirit of protesting and positive, or is it anger, or what's, from your perspective, what does it feel like down here?
I think people are upset, by the state of things. And a lot of the protest, there was one recently that was specifically around SB1, trying to fight for, the future of higher ed. So it was a lot of like teachers and students and, people who kind of opposed this bill at the state level. But some of the other protests have been very broad, and it's, you see signs like deport Elon,
right?
You see like anti-Trump signs, you see, anti-RFK signs. And so some of the, critique of the protest online is like, I don't even know what this is about because I see 30 different signs and different messages, and the person kind of leading chants will kind of guide people through chanting, but it's very like we're mad at everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's kind of understandable right at the moment.
It very much is. Yeah.
What is getting good hits on Columbus Underground?
Well, we both looked back at the past 3 months, and it's kind of funny. I guess we should just start with the number one article that kind of went viral-esque. I will say was about Easton converting some of their parking lots into paid lots.
Right.
Which it's one of those examples of like, I can't remember if we were the first ones to report it or if it just kind of like got into the, the algorithm of social media and caught some traction. But you look at the comments on Facebook and almost no one read the article.
Okay. Like they are just reacting to the headline.
They're reacting to the headline.
But funny enough, a lot of people did read it. Again, it was the analytics we are looking at is people visiting ColumbusUnderground.com.
Oh, yeah, yes.
But like
which is probably 10% of the people.
Yes.
Like, yeah, in that story, let me look real fast. 16,000 people read that story. Another 160,000 reacted to the headline.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of those instances of like, to me, that's a story that's not really that important in the grand scheme of things. Do you remember what the details of it were? Because I
mean, simply that they are going to start charging for some of their lots. They will still have free lots.
Yes.
But some of the more centrally located ones, they're going to.
Yeah.
It's the same system as it is on city streets here. You just pay in an app and you move on.
I mean, it's the same system in a lot of places where, you want. It's sort of like, oh, we're going to have these parking meters be 30-minute meters because we just want to turn customers over.
Right.
Like this is in front of a coffee shop. This is for people who just want to run in, grab a coffee, come out. It's not for people who want to park all day because they work somewhere nearby.
Right.
So we're going to incentivize, or we're going to de-incentivize the behavior we don't want and incentivize the behavior we want because this is designed to serve a different purpose.
Well, and I have two quick things here. Yeah. One, it's sort of like how people are like, I don't go to the Short North because there's no parking. And it's like, no, there's plenty of parking. There's just paid parking.
Yes.
And also, a friend of mine pointed out that there have always been meters at Easton on the streets.
Right.
And the reason why they implemented them, and this is coming from the horse's mouth, at least according to my friend, is they didn't want store employees to park there.
Correct.
They wanted it to be, so it's to your point.
It's a continuation.
That you incentivize.
Yeah. So the lots that we're flipping to paid were the ones. So like close to the Barnes and Noble, there's like maybe there's like a Chipotle there. I'm trying.
It's where like the cigar store, the PF Chang's is.
So there's a surface lot right there, and it's almost always full.
Yeah.
And it's kind of designed for people who want to park there, and maybe they're just going to Brassica.
Yeah.
In and out in 20 minutes.
Yep.
But if employees are parking there, then all of a sudden that spot is taken up for 8 hours.
Yep.
And so they're like, and the rates are like $1 an hour.
Yeah.
It's a pittance, but it's designed to say like, oh, if you're going to park here for the long term, go in the garage, park on the third floor in the garage. It's free.
Yeah.
That's where you should be if you're going to be here for a long time.
It's the same argument of like, well, I want to do this event. I don't need to charge money for this event, but also I kind of want to know how many people are coming.
Yeah.
So I'm going to charge $1.
Yeah.
So that there's some barrier of entry.
Yeah.
So people aren't just RSVPing to look good.
But it was kind of funny that a lot of the comments on Facebook anyway, were people saying this is corporate greed. And it's like, it's $1 to park. No one's gouging you.
Doesn't it still go into the same pot of charity?
Yes.
Like their parking
which is in the the article.
Okay. So not corporate greed.
Yeah. It's going into their fund for that. And the other sort of comment is just like, oh, this is a death knell for Easton. Like it's over. As soon as this goes into place, like I'm going to Polaris now. Because of that, and it's
you weren't going to Polaris before, friend.
Right? Yeah, like a $1 charge.
Right.
That's an optional. An optional $1 charge is not going to have any kind of impact. So
again,
it was one of those things. And this story was January 4th, so it was like everyone was just kind of getting back after vacation and holidays, and so I think it was one of those first kind of big stories that kind of caught people's attention, and they wanted to be mad about something. I think.
And there's a whole lot of development stories. I feel like that's your niche, your bread and butter to an extent. Can you give sort of a rundown of some of the bigger development stories?
The bigger development stories?
So like the apartments planned for Polaris.
Tuttle. Yes.
Excuse me.
Yeah, diagonally across from Tuttle, there's an office park, and I want to say it's 3 or 4 larger buildings.
Okay.
Probably built in like the 80s.
Okay.
Maybe early 90s. I don't know what their occupancy rates are, but I can't imagine they're great as a lot of office. A lot of the conversation too about like work from home and like office vacancies all across America has been centered upon central business districts. And people don't talk enough about like every outer belt in America is just surrounded by office parks.
Yeah.
And they're just as empty.
Yeah.
So the plan is to tear, I think, 2 of them down and build apartments and keep one of the office buildings. So it'll be kind of a mixed development. It's, if you know where that Walmart is off of Tuttle, so that's directly on the opposite side of 270 from the Tuttle Mall.
Yeah.
It's like just north of that.
How's Tuttle Mall doing? Like you did a rundown of like.
Haven't been in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you photographed the evidence of the decline of Polaris. This was at the occasion.
No, Tuttle.
It was Tuttle.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
It was rough. Yeah. When I went, and I want to say that was like the beginning of 2023. So
Okay.
It's been like 2 years since I kind of did that sort of thing.
Maybe time for a little refresh.
I've thought about it because at that point in time too, it was court owned. Like it was in foreclosure. I can't remember the official status, but it's since had a buyer. But I think the buyer is like a group of investors, not like a mall operator owner. So I think they're probably just gonna let it rot.
Is this my opportunity to talk about how much I dislike private equity and that it's contributing to the enshittification of
every industry
of everything?
Yeah.
By the way, sorry, can I plug an article not that you didn't publish?
Sure. Well,
Joe DeLoss had the opportunity. His former owner of Hot Chicken Takeover sold the business to private equity. It then got resold, which then he had the opportunity to say, well, that didn't go how I wanted it to go.
Right.
But Business First did a really fantastic piece that sort of outlines like, here's what private equity does.
Yeah.
And yes, there are good, God bless Richard Gere and Pretty Woman. There are places for, hey, this business isn't being run efficiently and we're going to make it run efficiently.
Yeah.
That's not what happens a lot of times. A lot of time they're literally just there to extract value.
Yeah.
And
I love the term vulture capitalism. So venture capitalism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
We see it a lot.
What
Toys R Us is a great example of that. If you Google,
I'm not familiar with that.
If you Google like why did Toys R Us go out of business, you'll find some really like cool like deep dive pieces of where they like over leveraged intentionally to like bankrupt the business.
Yeah, well,
and the group that purchased it also did like debt services. So they were just like sucking whatever money was left out of this. Like before they bought it, like Toys R Us was turning a profit. It wasn't like a failing business.
Okay.
And they drove it into the ground.
And I mean, this is the whole Red Lobster thing. Like
exactly. Yeah. Almost every, because there's also been talk about Red Robin shutting locations and going out of business.
Okay.
And almost any time you see those kinds of stories,
look at who.
Look it up on Wikipedia, and it's like they opened, they franchised, they grew, they sold again, they sold again, they sold again. And now it's in the hands of a venture capital firm and their
private equity.
Private equity.
I do want to be distinctive.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. I misspoke. A vulture capital, a private equity group that's just selling the assets, stripping it for parts and destroying it. And at the same time, it's like, are we really going to cry over Red Lobster going away? It's a big chain. It's but people are losing jobs. And,
to my point, Joe didn't just build a hot chicken restaurant. He, in my head, and I don't know if he would say this, he built an employment model that helped people who needed help.
Yes, they employed people with
records.
Yeah. Like prison records, and there's a term for it.
Yeah.
It's like difficult
to employ people.
Yeah.
And he found a way to make that work. And he had a successful, well-liked business. And I don't fault him for getting out of it, but yeah. So other development stories that have been in the news.
Yeah, one of the, some of the projects downtown, like the South 4th Street kind of tower going up from the Bluestone Group, that received some tax credits, like some state funding. I think it was the T-Mud stuff. There's been a couple others along those lines, but one of the bigger sort of economic development stories has been the Anderil defense contractor.
Yeah.
Which I think is technically in Pickaway County.
Okay.
But it's in the region. And they were given some gigantic incentive package from the state to build. It's high tech jobs. It's like 4,000 jobs. This big, like I think 500-acre site. I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me.
Yeah.
But that got a lot of attention. One, because I think it's one of the largest like job development programs in the history. I mean, it's up there with Intel in terms of like the size and the impact.
But
they're building killbots, you know.
Right, they're building drones for war.
Yeah. And it's like a lot of people feel icky about that.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. And so is this what the future of our Central Ohio economy should hang its hat on, I guess?
So, first of all,
yes.
And I don't know that I've ever revealed this, at least on this podcast.
Yeah.
I was raised Quaker. I inherently don't
love drones.
I don't love drones. Sorry, I don't like war drones. I own a drone.
Okay.
Right? It is not weaponized. It has a camera on it.
Yes.
But so first of all, I inherently don't like war. I don't like guns. It's just not my thing.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with people that do. My sister was actually in the military. She spent time in Afghanistan. And Columbus is a hub for defense. We have the defense, resource center here on the west side.
And
I don't
all
know
kinds
that
of things that Battelle does that's like top secret as well.
Yeah, and Battelle is part of the military-industrial complex as well, albeit in a non-profit way. But we can get into that another time. We should talk to them, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't think folks understand Battelle and what it does. But that being said, yes, I don't want a war machine factory close by, but I do think it's part of our fabric already. Mm-hmm. It's not different than the things that that are part of the fiber of us already. So that's my thought.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask more about the Quaker thing?
Yeah. So Quakers go to Friends meetings. We don't go to churches. Our churches are called Friends meetings.
Friends meetings?
Correct.
Okay.
The members of the Quaker church are friends.
Okay.
That's like a congregant, a friend.
Okay.
And there's no like minister. There's no like leader that runs a service. Mm-hmm. When you go to a service, and again, I was a very young child, so like I was in Sunday school for most of it.
Yeah.
But
is it still Christianity?
It's still, oh yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they're Christian.
Yeah.
You go to a service and they do the standard like, hey, we're having a potluck next week, and hey, we're doing XYZ. And then when the actual service starts, everyone is quiet unless a friend is moved to speak. So very commonly, what it will be is just basically people sitting in gathered prayer, and then you will hear someone say someone's name.
Gotcha.
And it may just be that. And it may be, I am sure that there are friends meetings where there are friends who like just feel like they're entitled to talk, and they do, but you're not like engaging with it in that way. It's not like everybody is like, oh, this person has the floor now. It's not that.
Gotcha.
It's interesting.
Huh.
Yeah, I was a Quaker.
Gotcha. What was? No more?
No, I'm a Unitarian now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Fun aside.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's been a couple other like larger scale development projects too. A big one out in Dublin, kind of off of where 161 and 33 split, kind of if you're headed toward Plain City.
Yep.
A big 44-acre mixed-use development site out there. Very, very pretty renderings on that one, so that got a lot of attention.
Okay.
Yeah, so even though there's been a lot of hand-wringing and worry about how tariffs are impacting things.
Yeah. Or will impact things.
Yeah. A lot of it has not kind of fully come to fruition, but that I think is just one more layer of complication, at least in like the housing development side of things, where people have been already worried that interest rates for commercial construction loans are higher than what they were a few years ago. So,
well, and I don't know if you've looked at lumber futures in a while, but
yeah, I have no reason to, but I guess outside of curiosity. But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see kind of a slowdown. I think we're already starting to see a slowdown. So even the things that are like getting announced, getting approved, like you might not see them really break ground. Like the things that are already under construction, are moving forward. But and I again, I don't think this is a Columbus problem. We love to beat ourselves up as if we have unique problems that other cities don't. But I think we're going to see this everywhere.
Well, and let's use that sort of as a transition then to, you had a piece that did pretty well that Brent did about how the behavior or actions of the new federal administration are already starting to sort of have ripple effects on Columbus.
Yeah.
What are those?
Yeah, I mean, Brent talked to a couple different, both private housing developers and public doing, like Homeport doing affordable housing. And everyone kind of agreed that either it's making them nervous, the disruptions that it could cause, or people are saying this is already having an impact on like projects that I'm working on down the pipeline. Like the funding that I have lined up, the investors that I have lined up, like a lot of them are getting cold feet on things. And so, and for nothing too. It's like, why start a lumber trade war with Canada? Like it feels very optional. Like we're not doing it to some end. It's just, let's do this for fun and make everybody else suffer in the process. So people were like very vocal and willing to speak out and say this is having negative impacts.
Yeah, and I do want to know, we are recording this like maybe 48 hours after I'm having a very hard political day. Sure. We are...
you go protest a block over at the Statehouse if you want.
Abducting and deporting legal immigrants to our country.
Yes, I saw the video.
And there's a lot, right? And our city attorney has joined a lawsuit to sue the Trump administration as well. Honestly, what feels like a small reason, like our money for trees was taken away. But it's important to fight back, and it's important to be vocal. And if you are listening to this and you are a person of privilege, I highly encourage you to speak out. And I think that there are so many opportunities to put our heads in the ground and say, well, someone else is going to solve this problem.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to be happening.
Yeah. And when we're talking about like a private housing developer, I think it's easy to say, oh, boo-hoo, this company's not going to be able to make more money.
Right.
Or whatever, which that's a fair critique. But at the same time, we were also looking at we did an article, this is more recent, so it's probably not in the top of this list, but the rate at which we're growing and the rate at which we're building housing. It's a continuation of a trend, but the summer of 2023 to the summer of 2024, the most recent like census estimate updates, 30,000 people in Central Ohio in that 1 year.
Moved here.
Yes.
We grew by.
We grew. So it's births and in-state and out-of-state.
State migration.
Migration. It's birth and migration. Sorry. Birth versus death and migration. Yeah. 30,000, which is, I always like to put it in terms of Grandviews.
Okay.
Do that before.
How many Grandviews
is like 8,000 people.
Okay.
So that's like 4.5 Grandviews.
Yeah. Okay.
We grew by 4.5 Grandviews in 1 year.
That's 3.5 Grandviews, but it's almost 4.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. My math was wrong, but thank you. Almost 4. So I can't.
I'm going to start using that, by the way. I haven't heard you do that.
Yes. Yeah. But that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then you look at the stats of like housing starts, like how many new builds, how many apartment units we're adding into the market, and it's always like half.
Well,
and you don't need a unit per person,
right?
Like
I think the math is we need 1 unit per every 1.5 people,
something along those lines. Yeah, and this is region-wide statistics. So this is 30,000 people in Central Ohio. So that's
the
Columbus,
MSA, right?
Yeah, it's suburbs, it's exurbs, kind of the surrounding counties, basically.
That's the metropolitan statistical area for people.
Yeah, but you look in some communities around here, and like how many new housing units they've added, and it's like 10.
Yeah.
In a year, like a small place like Obetz but even like New Albany doesn't build a lot of housing year over year. And we need more at every level in every neighborhood. And Columbus cannot be the only part of the region that is building housing because there's so much land in the region that is not in the city limits.
Are you ready for my theory of everything?
Yes.
Okay.
The everything bagel?
That actually everything bagel has kind of been brought into this too. There is a understanding that is starting to come into view. There are 2 books that just came out specifically about this. It's very hard for capital D Democratic places to build things.
Yeah.
We put a lot of restrictions on ourselves because we are concerned about real things. We're concerned about pay equity among people that build stuff for us. We are concerned about environmental impact. There are a lot of things that hold us back from doing things right. I am not trying to say that is good or bad. However, I think that Columbus actually is a little better at it because there is an argument that the Democratic Party came into power in places that were corrupt in order to fight that corruption. Okay, so if you accept that as basically the government should be doing these things that people in smoky rooms were doing for us before, and they were self-serving and it was keeping the little man down. Columbus didn't actually get rid of the smoky room, though. Columbus maintained, I'm not saying that they're corrupt at all.
Just doing more behind the scenes.
They are
behind closed
that
doors.
We do have known entities in this city that are sort of like, we want to see this happen, and so we're going to pull together our collective might, corporate money, nonprofit, semi-governmental organization, in order to make and see these things happen. Right? This is how we're going to handle it when City Center goes away. This is how we're going to solve the waterfront. This is how we're going to work with the state in order to get enough water to Intel so that it doesn't hurt Columbus.
Sure.
I think Columbus is uniquely positively positioned if people sort of wake up just a little bit and say, like, hey, there's a virtue of tax credits. And hey, there's like, I know that you don't like it, but progress is good in a certain direction as long as everyone's aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
Counter me here.
I mean, I have like 1,000 thoughts on a lot of this stuff, but going back to like the historic, like the reason it's hard to build in every city is because of single family zoning laws.
Yeah.
That were implemented in like the mid 20th century.
Yeah, and we just passed a zoning initiative that kind of is starting to change that.
It's a half step in the right direction.
You would argue it is not far enough, fast enough.
Correct.
And I agree with you there.
Yeah, and there's more to come. They're still working on it, which is fine. But a lot of that was done. It was basically, as we grew out into the suburbs as a country, we did so in a way that was not equitable.
Yep.
Basically, we wanted to.
It's called white flight for a reason.
Yeah. People with money and means that could move out there, and highly subsidized in every way, shape, and form.
Yes.
The federal government built the highways that enabled it. We, enabled car manufacturers and cheap gasoline.
GI Bill. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. We gave people very cheap land and cheap loans at a time when housing was, cheap, but said, oh, I mean, in the very early days, it was like, this is a whites only neighborhood. Like it was, the racism was on the brochures,
yes.
Advertising these places.
Looking at you, Upper
once
Arlington.
that became illegal, they switched to be classist instead of racist. They're like, if you want to build a house here, it has to be at least 2,500 square feet. It has to be at least 4 bedrooms. It has to be designed a very certain way, and it has to be on a 1/4 acre lot.
Yep.
And so basically, keep the poors out, which was just code for keep the minorities out.
Yep.
A lot of that is still in place today. The classism side of it.
Yeah.
Like you can't build within certain parameters in many places in America.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
I can't remember where I was going with this.
I think sort of understandably, so folks who are in a position of privilege, who do have, even a starter home in Upper Arlington, they view that asset as going to be negatively impacted by maybe not even affordable housing, just literally like I don't want an apartment building around the block, around the corner from me.
Sure.
Because the perception that it will lower your home's value.
Right.
Right. And they will say all day, I don't have any problem with people who make less money than me or are in a different class system.
Yeah,
than
they're
me.
trying to protect their asset.
But
The problem is that, housing should be viewed as shelter is a basic necessity.
yes,
People need to be indoors.
Yes.
A certain percentage of their lives.
yes,
But housing in America is an investment, and it can't really be both.
yep,
Like if we have unhoused people that we need to put in housing, or we have low income people that need shelter, it has to be built and it has to go somewhere. And so if you have a place where the value is high because of artificial scarcity, like 50,000 people want to live in Upper Arlington, and there's enough room for 30,000 people to live there. And as
Yeah.
long as you don't build more housing, you keep the supply and demand imbalanced, and your asset continues to grow in value. And I'm not trying to beat up on people in Upper Arlington. I'm just continuing to use it as an example in this case. And I don't think anyone, like when you present it that way, I don't think any one individual would be like, oh, well, yeah, I value my money more than I value human life living on the street.
certainly not.
But that's kind of what they're working against,
I think if we
collectively
can
speaking.
switch our headspace around a little bit and view housing as a commodity only,
Yeah.
we would all be a little bit healthier as a society rather than viewing your home as your primary investment vehicle.
Yeah.
And rant on that.
Yeah. I think there's ways to accommodate both, and I do think to give props to the fine folks in the development department and working on the zoning stuff. What we've done in Columbus, updating our zoning for the first time in 70 years as of last summer, is definitely needed, a great step in the right direction. Hopefully, some of our suburban counterparts are going to follow suit with that sort of stuff. But when you look at the map and what it is, it's really like corridors for high density development on major corridors. And we really need to take that next step and say we need to eliminate single family housing zoning like across the board, like throughout the entirety of the city. And so if somebody wants to build a duplex instead of a single family home, they are allowed to do that because right now it's illegal. If someone wants to build an ADU, like a garage mother-in-law suite, they're allowed to do that because right now it's illegal. People think that like you get rid of single family zoning laws and all of a sudden there's skyscrapers and everybody on everyone's streets. And it's like, no, you end up with something more like German Village, which is illegal to build now.
Yeah.
Because the houses are smaller, they're tighter together, they're closer to the street. They have little, carriage houses because that's what was built.
And it's one of the most sought after and expensive per square foot.
People want to live there.
Neighborhoods
and it's
in the city.
And it's walkable because everything's tighter. And so
Right.
we need more of that for, for people to live, to create better walkable communities. It's better for the environment. It'll be better, it'll improve transit systems. That's why our transit system sucks, is because it's a square peg round hole situation.
Right.
Like you can't build buses that serve low density.
What-
It's at SimCity 101.
What do you say to people that are like, well, it's going to negatively affect the character of my neighborhood?
I think negatively affect and change for just the sake of change or difference.
Yeah.
I think are two very different things. I think people say negative and they don't really understand what that means. I think it's coded classism and racism.
Okay.
And if you call people out on that, they'd be like, oh no. But like ask someone what they mean when they say it's going to change the character of your neighborhood. Like, what do you mean by that? Because I don't think there's many excuses that don't fall into classism or racism.
I think that's fair. We were going to get into parks.
We went way off the rails.
But I think this is good.
Yeah.
So
we can talk about parks too.
No, we don't need to. We're good.
Yeah.
Walker, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Thank you for listening to the Confluence Cast presented by Columbus Underground. Again, you can get more information on what we discussed today in the show notes for this episode at theconfluencecast.com. Please rate, subscribe, share this episode of the Confluence Cast with your friends, family, contacts, enemies, your favorite Quaker. If you're interested in sponsoring the Confluence Cast, get in touch with us. We can be reached by email at info@theconfluencecast.com. Our theme music was composed by Benji Robinson. Our producer is Philip Cogley. I'm your host, Tim Fulton. Have a great week.